that is still very much on our radar. The other thing is just for people sitting up at this table, I had a very quick response, and so we will have our little summer gathering on August 3rd. Details to follow for August 3rd. Now, because our agenda is packed and a little bit different tonight, I'm going to ask Renee Toth to come and do her presentation now rather than sitting through 2 executive sessions. I'll be taking this session. So Renee, thank you very much.
Renee Toth. I am one of the co-chairs of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, also known as the CPAC. We're invited tonight to present an annual report. I will just preface this saying I've never written an annual report. We've also never been in CPAC before, so I think we did a pretty good job putting together what we're all about and what we've done this year. Apologies, my co-chair, Melissa Sessions, wanted to be here and intended to be here, but at the last minute she's dealing with some family health issues, so she's on her own, but I am here with Diane Frickson, who will be our secretary, is coming in here for the CPAC. So thank you for coming. I wanted to give you a little information about what the CPAC is and why we exist, and it all centers around Massachusetts Special Education Law, Chapter 71B, which says the school committee of any city, town, or school district shall establish a parent advisory council on special education. Membership shall be offered to all parents of children with disabilities and other interested parties. The parent advisory council duties shall include, but not be limited to, advising the school committee on matters that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities, meeting regularly with school officials to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the school committee's special education programs. The Parent Advisory Council shall establish bylaws regarding officers and operational procedures. In the course of its duties under this section, the Parent Advisory Council shall receive assistance from the school committee without charge upon reasonable notice and subject to the availability of staff and resources. So that's where we get our legal benefit, our legal charge from. Our membership is open to all. You don't have to be a parent of a child with a disability to participate. Share with you a little bit about our actual mission. It's written right in the report what our mission is. And I'll read my own mission statement out of my packet. I know I reordered the pages. Thank you. So our mission is to work for the understanding of, respect for, and support of all children with special needs in the community. So to that end, we'll advise the school committee on matters that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities. And then as it's, in the law, now you really hear me, we'll meet regularly with school officials to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the school committee's special education programs, assist the district in coordinating at least one workshop about the basic rights, promote a support network of parents of children with special needs and provide a forum to share information, promote the CPAC, communication between members, local, state, and national organizations, and just communicate within the community to encourage understanding, acceptance, and inclusion of special needs children, and provide other forums that are educational or informational as well. This has been a complete building year. Our district did not have a CPAC for a few years, so even if you've heard of one in the past, we're brand new. We've had some great success getting off the ground.
We have officers and parents that represent every school, and we also are fortunate that some of our members have dual roles as parents and as teachers, bus drivers, and aides. So we actually are getting a really good understanding of what the situation is with special education in the district. So far this year, we have held a lot of meetings. We've held workshops with an attorney. We've held a workshop with the ARC of Haverhill and Greater Newburyport. We've held coffee socials so that families can connect to each other. A couple of the other highlights are that we've formally requested from the district a time right before school starts for children, students, families to be able to meet the special education teachers and aides so that there's some familiarity on that first day of school. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you here? And even just doing little things like changing the way some school events are held so that rather than just having everyone included, everyone can thrive. An example of that is at Newberry Elementary. For our Halloween party, we recognize that some students have difficulty with such a stimulating environment, and so we worked with the PTA and established what we called a chill room, where it was a quiet area that families could go and just have quiet play, but they were still able to be at the school for the event. And it actually was a quite popular spot, especially with parents who needed to get away. And so we hope to be able to go out to the other schools as the year comes, the next year comes, and really build on that. So moving towards the future, we recognize that the number one thing we want to do is grow and be more of a resource to the district and among, really connect families with each other. We're going to hopefully do that through more social hours, more speaker programs. One of our obstacles is that because we are subject to all the laws of being a public organization and a division of the school, it's difficult for us to raise money directly. So we would have to establish a separate Friends of the CPAC group, and we're just starting out. I mean, we've had about 20 people be actively involved already, which we're thrilled about. That's more than we anticipated initially, so it gives us great momentum. But as you know, doing great things usually costs money. So far, we have received a pledge of a gift of $500 from the Newbury PTA. $100 just came in from the Salisbury PTA, and the high school, middle school has pledged that they'd like to co-sponsor a program, a speaker or something with us as they make their plans for the fall. We also intend to work with the administration more closely in doing our roles of assisting in the planning, development, and evaluation of programs. And one of the things we are doing is trying to establish the common things we're hearing that are strengths and that are weaknesses in the district for special education so that we can bring it to the attention of those who can make a difference so that it's not just a parent venting to a parent or a parent praising to another parent. Good things happen, we need to publicize those, and when things need to be improved, we want to really stand and advocate for all the children in the district so that that can happen. And one of the ways we're going to do that is try to get more communication going out to families so that they know about the CPAC's existence. We're going to be working with the special education department to include flyers in all correspondence that goes out from the district when you receive a meeting notice, and also something to hand out at meetings. So our first year has gone much better than we anticipated, and we're going to be building on it and hope to do some great things here in the district with your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renee. Does anyone have any questions?
A comment that you've accomplished a lot in 1 year, and I'm sure under your leadership and others, it's going to really come to fruition. So good for you.
Thank you.
Good for what you're doing for the kids.
It is recommended the committee receive and file the report and at some point identify issues that require further attention. Brian can come back. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items on tonight's consent agenda that any of our committee members would like to remove from the consent agenda? Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed?
I'll make
Could
a...
I just clarify? Could I
Oh,
just
sure.
clarify one thing? Under the donations, it says 12,000 anonymous donation. It was an anonymous donation, but it was to the NES PTA. So we really ought to recognise this was an anonymous donation through the Newbury Elementary School PTA.
So noted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Could we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing contracts with the Triton Teachers Association and the Triton Instructional Assistants Association. Before we do that, I need to say Suzanne will not be, neither Suzanne nor I will be participating in the discussion regarding the teacher's contract. Suzanne has been in that position for several years. It's new for me. After we came to a tentative agreement with the teachers union, my daughter is going to be employed by the school district next year, so I will not be participating in the discussion at all. So could we have a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy in relation to the negotiations of collective bargaining agreements? We will return to open session.
I make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy in relation to the negotiation of collective bargaining arrangements and to return to open session.
Could we have a second, please?
Second?
Okay, we need a roll call vote.
Yes. Dick Cummings.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Dina, what one do you want to do?
Free to go.
We're going to do the teachers first.
Stay.
Off you go.
Yes, Suzanne and I, we're not going. Okay, I get it. You get to go. You go. No, I don't have to leave.
Stay.
Get to go coffee and cookies.
No, I just had some. Oh. I need to do my lesson planning. I'm doing my lesson plan. Oh, doing my homework. All right, now I gotta comment on someone's stupid comment. Okay. I did. I haven't.
Oh, that's okay.
I did. I haven't responded, but yes.
No, that's okay. Everybody has responded except you. Everybody. And I'm only saying that because I didn't really expect that. Yeah. The only one that can't come. Dick. Yeah. He's on.
Oh, when was it last year? Because we went. Was it the same time? Like in August?
Yeah. I don't really know, but it's kind of a miraculous turn.
You got the stick. No, I think it was two. After so many times. I know he's still frustrated. No, I just posted. I need to write, like, you have a very interesting post. I really like your idea. No,
Friday night I have my clients come for death call. So that's why I'm
oh, that's good. Oh, yeah, August 3rd, I don't know where I'll be.
I hope you'll be on the deck. When do you get out?
I don't get out till the last Friday in June.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm a little bummed about that. My kids are out of school a week before me. What's this
Courtney
guy?
gets out the same day as here.
Where's she teach?
Groton Dunstan. Watermelon sangria, that's what I was looking for. Vodka. I don't like why do you put vodka in watermelon sangria?
What would you put?
Huh?
What else would you
Wine. That's what sangria is.
You're the wrong person.
I'm gonna make I made a sangria based on a recipe from the Mill River Winery,
Yep.
which was good, but I thought I would try something different. So this is watermelon, how many servings? I don't know if it's only a cup of vodka, so we can try it. It's time.
For what?
We go. Come on.
Oh, come on, I gotta submit my thing. Did you bring anything?
I don't think so. We're going.
Oh, really?
Okay.
If I need to be there earlier, I can.
Okay.
What you're going for. Well, you try to follow what's going on.
I know.
Oh, you're not Jesse.
But outside of the contract.
Okay.
We didn't want to do that to the people in the district. We didn't want to do that.
But it's the same. Oh, okay, all right, I didn't understand. Seriously.
We're back. Dina, would you like to make the announcement?
Yes, thank you, Deb. I am pleased to announce that the school committee has settled 2 contracts tonight. We have approved the Triton Regional Teachers Association contract and the Triton Regional Instructional Assistance contract. I'll give you the details for both. For the teachers contract, it is a 3-year contract. The first year, there are no steps and then a 2% COLA. The second year, there are steps and a 2% COLA. The third year, there are steps and a 2% COLA. And there's a 2% COLA cost to all of the stipends in 2015. We also gave them longevity, and a CAGS and doctorate column was added. For the instructional assistance contract, that too is a 3-year contract. For the first year, there's steps only for those hired prior to 2007, 2008, with a 2% COLA for the rest. The second year of the contract for FY16, there's steps and a 2% COLA increase. And for 2017, there's steps and a 2% COLA increase as well. So congratulations to all of us, really, for 2 contracts that were well negotiated with reasonable people for the good of our employees and for the students. Thank you.
I'm just wondering. Okay. Good plan. Should I write my name too? Okay, good.
Deb? Deb? Can I recommend that you explain what's going on now?
Oh, yes. And I also, COLA is cost of living adjustment too. I just thought it. Right now, Sue just signed the contract for the teachers union because she is president of the teachers union, and I am going to sign the contract as chair of the school committee. And then we will do the same with the instructional assistance contract.
Arts pen. No public funds were harmed in the making of those pens.
I was going to want to know how I could get
I
one.
did it myself. I'll give you one.
Just in general, this is, I think, the third contract cycle, I think, at least third that I've been involved in. And, you know, there are ups and downs in any process like that, but the experience has generally been, and I think it's important for everybody to know this, it's been a very positive experience. I think there's mutual respect on both sides of the table, and it's good, and I hope it stays that way. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the administration of state tests in 2014. I believe Mr. Farmer will talk to us about that.
Thank you. You'll see the recommendations in section 2. The recommendation is that we seek approval from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to administer the PARCC test through grades 3 through 8 using paper and pencil rather than computers for the 2015 year. And that given the fact that there is now a longer lead-in time, that we look to develop a 4-year plan that would help us to embed blended learning, use of computers regularly in teaching and learning, as a way of improving teaching and learning, and at the same time prepare for a world in which state tests are typically administered via computer. You have some background here. You'll know that the PARCC test was established by a consortium of states using federal money, much of it from private sources, which has been a matter of political concern, in order to assess the Common Core. Now, the state adopted a new curriculum frameworks based on the Common Core in 2010 for ELA and math. That they have not adopted new assessments for science at this stage. And so 2 groups of states began developing assessments for the Common Core. The MCAS at the moment is not properly aligned with the Common Core. So if we're preparing students for the Common Core, which we are doing, the assessments that students are now taking are not completely aligned with that. And for me, you have to test what you've taught, not test something else. At this stage, there's no doubt that the PARCC test is different from MCAS. If you look at page 2 at the top, you'll see it comes in 2 phases. There's some performance-based assessment, which will typically be administered in March, followed by an end-of-year assessment, probably very early in June. The PARCC test has been field tested this year, and you'll know that we participated 4 classes of Algebra 2. Overall, there has been a lot of field testing across the state. What's very clear is that the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education are not likely to make a decision on whether to move to the PARCC test until well into the fall of 2015, because if they're still giving tests in June 2015, they're going to need to understand how that has worked and evaluated that before a recommendation can be made to the board. What's very significant is that at a recent meeting with superintendents, the commissioner made it very clear that if the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education did not approve the introduction of the PARCC, the state would immediately begin to modify the MCAS in order to align it with the Common Core. So he's saying, if he's still here when we have a new governor, that MCAS would need to change. And in fact, he's right, because we've adopted the Common Core, and therefore we need to have an assessment that matches it. The other significant thing is that they were talking about keeping paper and pencil tests in 2016. And districts like ours, which have made some progress in terms of introducing technology for teaching and learning, are not equipped to administer tests universally. And it's highly unlikely that we could by 2016. 2018 is different. It gives us more lead-in time. And if you had asked me a month ago what my advice would have been, it would have been to stay with MCAS. But given the changed timelines, my view has changed, and we've discussed this with the leadership team. It was the consensus that it would be a mistake not to take advantage of learning from the PARCC test if something like that is going to be introduced anyway. There's clearly background information at section 4 to indicate the similarities and not. It's a change in the timeline, which certainly I think has changed people's minds. I can't tell you really what other districts are doing. I know that some have said we're going to stay with MCAS. I don't think that's the best position for a district to be in. The other thing the state has said is that in terms of the level, the accountability level of a school or a district, if districts do administer the PARCC test in 2015, they'll be held harmless. They will publish data, but we're currently a level 2 district. We could go up to level 1 as a result of that participation, but we couldn't go down to level 3. And this has been a bit of a sales pitch that they've put out in order to try to get people on board. I think it's important that you make a decision today. You could make a decision in October. If you make a decision today to go with the PARCC test, the state is guaranteeing that we will get the PARCC test. If we leave it until October because they don't have enough funds to resource the PARCC test for all districts, then it will be challenged as to whether or not we got the PARCC if we asked for the PARCC in October. I think even more importantly is that teachers go home knowing what assessments they're going to be preparing students for at the start of next year. As a teacher, I would not want to come back and start teaching in September and then learn presumably after October, because if the deadline for making applications is October, it's going to be probably November before that's sorted out. I think that's putting teachers in a very difficult position. And I don't think that families are going to be very thrilled at not knowing what assessment their students are going to take until well into the fall. So when you put all that together, the consensus of the administration is that we should make application for the PARCC test in 2015, but with paper and pencil, simply because we're not ready. And not ready just because we don't have the technology. You've heard me say before that I'm very concerned that the extent to which students have regular access to technology at the moment is very, very varied. The other issue is that if they're going to be taking computer-based tests for the state test, we need to kind of mirror that experience in terms of our general assessment of students through the school year, not simply put them in front of a computer for an important test. That they need to be using computers for assessments on a fairly routine basis. And that means skilling up our teachers to modify existing tests to put them into a format that will work on a computer. And I don't know that we have many assets at the moment to enable us to do that. So really it's trying to take a 4-year view to see the priority of technology is still improving teaching and learning, but at the same time develop our capacity to feel comfortable about state tests in the future. So you have the background, you have the recommendation. If I could just say one further thing. You will have seen in the press recently that there are a number of states backing out of the Common Core. Oklahoma most recently, previously South Carolina, and in Indiana. It's interesting on the whole that those decisions are essentially political decisions about who controls the curriculum rather than based on an assessment, in my view, of the merit of the Common Core. They also happen to be states that are going to struggle with the Common Core because the achievement levels of their students are nothing like Massachusetts. And while there is an issue in Massachusetts, there are people who are against the Common Core, I think that people here feel much more comfortable about it, simply because in terms of international standards, our students do pretty well. And so I think there's less discomfort about the threat of a more challenging assessments for students. I am going to ask Chief Academic Officer if you want to put a footnote on any of the things I've said. Is there anything I've missed?
No, I just think it is a good opportunity for the teachers and the students to get a sense of what the Common Core assessments will look like, because at this point, like he had mentioned, that the MCAS is really reflective of the old frameworks, and we have been working hard to update our curriculum and our teaching, so this would be a good kind of practice run for us to get a sense of what else we need to do to support the learning in regards to the Common Core.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
I know in the past that you've used like the MCAS data to place kids in advanced math and things like that as a piece of assessing that. Will now the park take that over?
It will. One of the differences is that the park tests discriminates at 5 different levels of performance. MCAS 4, that they will produce student growth percentiles. They found a statistical technique to enable some comparisons to be made. So we will get data on student achievement and student growth, which will be similar, if not exactly the same, as that we get out of MCAS.
So how would you, because if you switch from MCAS to park, how are you going to have a gap in your data? Won't you have a gap?
Well, it's called the equi-something statistical analysis. That they have developed a statistical technique for saying if this is MCAS, this is how it correlates with Park, and they seem pretty confident about that. They have their statisticians at the meeting with superintendents that I mentioned to you earlier. Do I pretend that I understand the technique? No, but the statisticians are saying we can do this.
And what about, how is this, like I know that MCAS data is linked with the teacher's evaluation tool. How is that going to be addressed?
Well, there would still be, it's the student growth percentiles, which is the critical thing out of the teacher evaluation arrangements, and they are going to produce student growth percentiles.
So if we're having if we're having a new assessment tool that the teachers are unfamiliar with, I'm just questioning whether the teachers would be on board with that. So if you're an MCAS teacher and that's linked to your performance or your evaluation, and all of a sudden now we jump to this evaluation, and you know you're saying it's a good experience for these teachers, but do those teachers actually want to have that new experience linked to their assessment that's going to be in their file?
I understand your concern, and in large measure I share it. The reality is that the median growth percentiles across the district as a whole last year achieved our targets. They're over 55, and the moderate growth, which means that we've got satisfactory growth, is between 40 and 60. So we're already in the kind of upper half of that, and I've been saying to teachers, you should not be too worried about this. There may be individual teachers who are away from that median, but overall our teachers should feel pretty comfortable that their students are making very satisfactory growth. In some cases, if you look at some schools, in some subjects, very, very high growth. So I understand the concern. The other thing to say is that The student growth data is one piece of data that will be used, and it is intended that that will support professional assessment of teacher performance. It will not drive that. It will be the basis of discussion, and certainly any evaluator would need to sit down and discuss with each individual teacher the composition of the class, where they were at the start of the year, and clearly if we're dealing with pilot data, then I am going to absolutely discourage anybody from drawing any really firm conclusions using that pilot data. It will be noted, it will be discussed, but it will not drive teachers' evaluations, at least not in this district.
Are the teachers on board with this? Are they aware of this? That this is something that, does this have to be in the contract? I mean, because it's like is it just state data in general, or is it?
This would not go in a contract. The state has authority to mandate what tests are given, and they've said that families cannot withdraw students. I don't know what they would do if families did.
Are your district determined measures based upon any MCAS data that you've? I mean, I know that you haven't submitted any of that, but
certainly student growth percentiles, yes.
And you're define that as PARC from now on.
Well, if the committee votes to for us to administer the PARC, and don't forget it's only grades 3 through 8. PARC will also assess grades 9 and 10, and we're assuming that we're going to continue not putting them into a state test next year. For grade 10, the MCAS is still in place because that is the graduation requirement. So there would be no PARC grade 10 across the state anyway. So for high school teachers here, they'd be staying with MCAS. It would be elementary and middle school teachers who would be kind of shifting their alignment towards PARC. I do want to say again that I hope that the administration's track record in trying to take these mandates and handle them in a way that is thoughtful and reasonable, notwithstanding state expectations, would reassure the committee that that is what we will continue to do.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Farmer about the PARC test? Paul?
I do. Mr. Farmer, I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts about the DESC rolling out the Common Core and not at the same time rolling out the appropriate testing mechanism?
Well, the Common Core is rolled out because it's in place in the new curriculum frameworks, and I think we ought to develop language that recognizes that we actually have new curriculum frameworks which reflect the Common Core. I think the Common Core becomes a kind of political language, whereas we've been used to talking about state frameworks. That's what's been adopted. The PARC system is an attempt to align the assessments that students have with the Common Core. We're in trouble if we don't have the development of assessments that are in line with the new state frameworks.
Well, I raised the question on the off chance that somebody from the DESC is watching this publication, and I find it problematic that they roll out the Common Core and they don't at the same time give us a mechanism to test the students. I see a lot of confusion here in the future. I know the administration will do the best job that they can to try to pass this together, but you know, the top of page 26 in our package, the right-hand column of that is just troubling for me. It spells out confusion. I think it's unfair to the teachers. And it's no reflection upon the administration or Triton. It's just, in the event the DESE is watching, I think you need to do a better job.
I think a lot of people would agree with you, sir.
Does anyone else? Linda?
I don't have a question other than a comment that inevitably I believe the PARC is going to be what the state adopts anyway, so I'm in favor of going towards the PARC because it allows teachers to get used to what is going to inevitably be coming down the pike. And I believe that with the administration being as cautious as they are about the PARC and what Suzanne said about the teachers' evaluations, I think it will give them more comfort to know that the administration and the school committee are in agreement that the park is coming. We understand it's going to be difficult, but together we can comfortably get to where you want to be in the 4-year plan.
Thank you. I should have mentioned, I think you know that I circulated teachers with a different paper, but based upon these recommendations earlier in the week, I was persuaded to leave it until after graduation. And the only response I got is from the president of the TRTA, who said, thank you, fine.
Any more questions regarding the park test? Could we have a motion to approve the communication to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education of a request that the district have the opportunity to administer the park test to students in grades 3 through 8 using paper and pencil rather than a computer-based testing arrangement in 2015, and the development of a 4-year plan designed to embed developmentally appropriate blended learning practice across the district to support the development of computer-based learning and in preparation for the state's anticipated move towards mandated computer-based assessment.
So moved.
Could we have a second?
Second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No? Opposed? 2 opposed? Oh, you're an opposed. Suzanne's opposed. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a very brief item. Around 2006, 2007, I personally became curious to find out where students were admitted to colleges, not where they were going, because I think that where students go is affected by financial concerns. I think where students are admitted gives us a different kind of picture about what the educational process has been for the students at Triton Regional School District. So I asked if we could know where students had been accepted. This is just for our own information. There was a time several years ago where this information was very helpful with the people in the different towns because we could show them that our students were accepted at a variety of very good colleges. So that's the only reason that's here. Christopher?
Could I just add that I did check this list against the list of the top 100 universities in the country. And if we briefly go through this, on page 1 you'll see University of New Hampshire and UMass Amherst. On page 2, Clemson, and again New Hampshire. Page 3, Tufts, Boston College. Page 4, University of Vermont. Boston College, Tufts, and again, Boston University on page 5, Northeastern University, University of Colorado at Boulder, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, through to page 7, Georgia Institute of Technology, page 8, University of Iowa, Miami University, Oxford, Purdue University, Ohio State University, page 9, University of San Diego, page 10, Syracuse, Pepperdine, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Those are all in the top 10, top 100 universities as ranked by, I think it's US something or other.
Suzanne?
I just have a question whether this is public data or not. Is this, did parents have the option to opt out of this?
We have not given that option. We most of this, or at least where students are actually going, is published at graduation. So this is simply an extension of that.
And that's just for ourselves, just to...
Right, no, but this is now a public document because it's part of our school committee packet.
The next item on our agenda is the report of the superintendent of schools. Mr. Farmer?
You've got my non-routine schedule. I've actually been to 2 Pine Grove curriculum showcases. I thank the principal this morning for what we saw today. The assistant superintendent and the chief academic officer were also in the school as well. In some cases, they had students dressed up as if it was a wax museum, and they were all prepared to talk about it. I met Horatio Nelson holding a telescope to her good eye. I heard a very nice rendering of the national anthem in Robin Duncan's class. Who else did I? Oh, I met President Lincoln as well. He failed to mention the greatest speech ever made in the English language, but when I asked him about it, he knew all about it. So it was very good. The rest of this, I think, is straightforward for your information. District determined measures. The department has agreed that our submission can be delayed until the end of June, and that should give us an opportunity for the Teachers Association Administration Working Group to have a look at what we've got. We're still trying to get our heads around what it is we have got, but a lot of work has been done. The next part of this is just to alert you to the fact that there are still more changes to come on the educator evaluation arrangements. The DESE is preparing model surveys to give to students, and model surveys for students to comment on teachers, and for parents to comment on administrators. One of the interesting things we heard from a district that was piloting these is that in a kindergarten class, sometimes the students don't make a distinction between the teacher and the instructional aide who's helping the teacher, which could be a complicating factor. Fingerprinting, you've heard about that before. What's a little bit troubling is that we're hearing that where districts are getting results, there's less information on a federal fingerprinting report than there is on a CORI report, because of variations in the circumstances in which local police actually take a fingerprint. And in many cases, they only take them for a limited set of kind of felonies rather than misdemeanors. I should add that Brian and I met with a couple of attorneys from the State Auditor's Office on Monday. They were intrigued by our argument that this was an unfunded mandate, and we're going away. We're arguing that because we can't rely upon another district's determination without having the data that they base that determination on, it's a huge liability risk, and therefore it is in effect an unfunded mandate, and they went away to look at that. And while they were here, we also suggested that they look at school meals, where we've done some work recently on what we would need to charge for school meals if we charged all the costs which are currently in the general fund to school meals. And Lucinda was talking about $4.75. 450, 475 for meals. So they went away to think about that as well. You're probably aware there's a gun bill before the House at the moment. There are three areas that it affects us. One is a mandate to appoint resource officers. I don't think anybody's opposed to that. The questions are, where does the money come from, and who is actually the employer? Because as we read the bill, it looks as if they're saying that it's a school district who actually employs the resource officer. How that would work in a district like this, where Byfield to Salisbury is quite a long way, and is that 3 part-time, or what do they mean by that? And then district mental health plans, the expectations that as in maybe part of a wellness plan, we would have a mental health plan, partly in terms of routine mental health, but also in terms of emergency, what we do if there is an emergency where people are very disturbed. I don't know that school districts in general have the capacity to service a mental health plan. I think they're thinking that our psychologists would fulfill that role. But I don't know that when they became school psychologists, they were necessarily thinking that this would be a role for them. So there's a big capacity. Writing the plan may well be the easy part. It's actually writing a plan that can be then delivered, I think, will be the problem. And then they're wanting dedicated two-way communication, radio communication between schools. By dedicated, it means a separate radio. Now, we have quite a number of people who have the police frequency on their handsets. So they're carrying one radio and they can turn it to that frequency. Being an assistant principal carrying two radios doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense. Anyway, we will see where that goes. We are looking at the educator evaluation arrangements in two ways. I think I mentioned before that the administration, that you would need to approve it, but we're talking about reducing the number of visits to individual teachers. People are not able to do what we're currently expecting them to do in the time that's available. And we will be, if we reduce the number of visits, we'll be relying on the fact that if an administrator or supervisor sees something which is not satisfactory, they are required by the arrangements to make another visit of at least 30 minutes within 30 days to look at that issue. So if there is somebody who is struggling, that there's a safety net there that means people have to keep going back. The other thing that we're talking about, the president of the TRTA knows this, and we're discussing it at leadership on Friday, is trying to make sure that when teachers receive either a summative or a formative evaluation, it arrives as a draft rather than a finished article which can then be discussed. I do that with administrators. They all get a draft for discussion at a meeting, not this is what I think, do you want to rebut it or whatever. Technically we think we can probably do that. If we do it, we might need to look at whether we shift some of the timeline for due dates to fit that in. So I just wanted to alert you to the fact that we are discussing those two issues. Apart from congratulating Margot Lacey becoming a principal and Heather Castengay assistant principal, I do want to talk about Italian, if I may. You'll recall that last year you agreed that we would withdraw from Chinese. Well, we haven't actually withdrawn from Chinese. We've maintained a program using the Middlebury online arrangement supported by a non-Mandarin speaking linguist. There was a commitment to survey the community as to what schools should do. The survey said Italian. Italian was actually what came out of the previous survey when, despite the fact that Italian was getting the most support, we introduced Mandarin Chinese. Within the budget that you have approved, that there is the flexibility, because of changes in other subjects, to appoint a 0.6 Italian teacher to introduce the Italian program. And so I'm hoping that you are going to approve that, because if Chinese is being phased out, we do need to have a replacement. So it's unusual, but this is something that's come through as we've been looking at the number of sections that we need for the high school next year during the course of this week. So I do have within the report a formal recommendation that you approve the introduction of Italian as part of the high school program studies. As usual, if you have questions about what I reported on or things that I haven't reported about, I'll do my best to respond.
Would you like us to take a vote on the Italian program first? I think.
Fine, yes, that would be.
Could we have a motion to approve a .6 Italian teacher to be at the high school starting in September?
It is cost neutral. We can do this
Yes.
within the approved
So
budget.
moved.
Could we have a second? Is there any discussion on the .6 Italian teacher? Robin?
My only question is, with this new offering, will, like kids that have already signed up for courses, will we go back and offer Italian now to 8th graders coming into the 9th grade and anybody who might want to
Well,
take a second
sometimes
language?
high school principals do things and then apologise afterwards. That's been my experience. And so this opportunity has been published, and there are sufficient students who've shown an interest to fill 3 sections.
Are there any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Erie. Are there any questions on any other parts of Mr. Farmer's report? Suzanne?
I just have a question on the fingerprinting. It was brought to my attention that, and I don't know if you have the answer for this, that the fingerprinting only lasts a certain amount of years. It's not a lifetime fingerprinting for your.
I think our understanding is different. That
The requirement is once.
Yeah, there. Are you,
Corey's every 3 years.
right. No, my personal experience is that when I went there and I got my fingerprints done, she said that I'll have to come back in so many years. I'm just saying that the local, there's a discrepancy with what we are told and what the actual agencies are telling us. Yeah. Yeah, and I said, is this it? And she's like, well, there's word on the street that you'll have to come back in X amount of years. So if that could be clarified it's just kind of I was told that, I've heard other teachers told that, and I just didn't know if that was anything, because that's just another cost that you might run into.
No, we implement the regulations, and there's nothing there that suggests that it's more than an initial.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It could change. I'm just not sure if that it was in your ear at all.
Not at all. No, not at all.
But the problem is when folks go from a district to another district. You would likely be required to do it again because
This was like.
I have a question about the fingerprinting too, because you mentioned this was an unfunded mandate, but it's unfunded to the teachers. It's not unfunded to the district, because we're not paying for it anyway, correct?
Well, we are if we have an example of a Newburyport teacher who we appoint as a coach here. The Newburyport teacher has fingerprints done
Yes.
for Newburyport.
Oh, okay.
We now need fingerprinting. Not that we don't trust our colleagues in Newburyport, but if things go wrong, we'll be liable. So I would want, and that's why in the document that you're going to look at later, it's saying as a matter of policy, we will require a second, and if it's a second, then we have to pick up the bill.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on Mr. Farmer's report?
We may revisit this, but I was just reading through the different school council minutes, and I noticed at Newbury Elementary School there was discussion about not going on field trips as frequently, but going through a lot more just in-house enrichment. And in some of the others, in Pine Grove, they were talking about some of the really neat field visits they had done. And I've just heard from parents recently kind of a frustration about not going to some really fabulous historical locations in our own backyard, but a lot is being done in-house. And I know tonight we are going to address in the under policy the overnight and out-of-state school-sponsored visits, which also just talks about general field lessons, I should say, or visits. So is it appropriate to just ask you about that now, or wait till we get to that in policy?
Fine. I firmly believe in children learning outside school. And I'm a physical geographer. I used to take, and an urban geographer, I used to take kids to towns, cities, out into, look at glacial landscapes, because if you see it in front of you, it becomes far more real. So Yes, in terms of experiential learning generally, absolutely support that. The difficulty is that since the district doesn't fund it, we only have a bully pulpit in terms of encouraging it. And of course the PTAs tend to be the people who are funding this. It's a free and appropriate public education, but a lot of it happens because of the goodwill of PTAs. So we can try to influence that.
Yeah, I just would say that I'm sure people are trying to respond to financial crunches and are looking at different things, but I'm hearing from parents, and I feel strongly as you do, that when we have these historical locations in our backyard, it's terrible that we're not going there.
Right.
So striking the balance between the in-house enrichment and actually going on the field visits, I just want to encourage schools and PTAs to keep looking at.
Any other questions on any part of Mr. Farmer's report? All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the evaluation of the superintendent of schools. And I did this a little bit differently. And I did not have all the evaluations in until Monday afternoon. So that's one of the reasons why you didn't have anything ahead of time. But I'll go over what I have. The simple one-page sheet is just a selection of some of the comments that were on people's evaluations, just for your information and for your interest to see some of the things that your colleagues said. And what I did to show you what the combination was to take a sheet of paper, which was just like the one that you filled out, and show you what the average was on each of those things. So I'll go over that briefly with you now. The first page shows you how many members voted in the assessment progress towards goals, how many people decided each of those categories, whether it was some progress, significant progress, or met or exceeded. That's the number of members that made those designations. And it kind of goes out of order here, but anyway, what you see at the bottom is the standard, the average score for each of the 4 standards, but the detail for that is on the pages that follow. I figured the average for each one of the indicators, as well as the average overall, because I thought that might be of interest to people, to see what each of the indicators was. So that's what you have out at the end there. For example, on Standard 1, curriculum ensures that all instructional staff design effective and rigorous standards-based units of instruction consisting of well-structured lessons with measurable outcomes. The average score on that was 3.5. Out of 4, right? That's all out of 4. Everything is out of 4. And then based on your overall ratings, you had to give an overall rating, whether it was needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary. And the 3.4 at the bottom of that page was what the average was for the category, for that particular standard. Brian's frowning. Okay. I thought you were frowning. Not frowning? Okay, reading. Do you understand what? Okay. Maybe you were squinting. Squinting. So anyway, I don't necessarily want to go through every single one of these. We can if you'd like to, but I want you to take a look at this, and I think it'll give you a pretty clear picture of where everybody stood on each of the indicators, as well as the standards. Again, because I didn't have all of the evaluations until Monday afternoon, I don't have copies of the full evaluation for each person, for each of you, but we will get those to you. If you'd like them prior to our meeting in August, we can get them to you prior to the meeting in August. If you are okay waiting until the meeting in August, we can do it then. Does anybody? Yes.
Do you want to read these
Yes, for the public. Thank you very much, Robin. There are 4 standards in this evaluation. Standard 1 is instructional leadership. And Mr. Farmer got a 3.4 out of 4 on instructional leadership. Standard 2 is management and operations. Mr. Farmer scored a 3.6 out of 4 in that standard. Standard 3, family and community engagement, 3.5 out of 4. And standard 4, professional culture, 3.4 out of 4. And I think these are wonderful scores. There were a lot of thoughtful comments written down. Any more questions or anything about that? Just a little reminder, if you score someone exemplary, or if you score them needs improvement, there should be supporting comments. And there were some people who did not put any comments in their evaluations, so I would like to give those people the opportunity to add some comments before their evaluations are printed and distributed to everybody.
Make a comment on that. The form that I sent to you, I had a written out Word document that didn't come.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I do have comments. I just think that when I sent it to you, I scanned it, and I scanned this sheet, but I just didn't attach the Word document with it. So I do have those.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have a preference as to whether you would like the documents, the complete documents, sent to you now, or would you like them in August? August is fine? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Again, Dana, you have...
Yeah, can I just ask a question? So are we going to be reviewing this again in August? Or this is it for the superintendent's evaluation?
Well, that's up to the committee. If you would like to review it once you've seen everybody's full document, that would be fine.
No. The reason why I'm asking, I mean, I think the composite gives us all that information. I mean, we can certainly see everybody else's evaluations, but one thing that I know we've struggled with before as far as doing this evaluation, and this is really only the second time that we've done it this way, is that it is very hard to score the superintendent in May when the school year hasn't ended.
Yes.
And it makes sense to me, if we're going to be looking at this, if we, and I haven't talked to Mr. Farmer about this, I've had a brief discussion with you about this, but to do the evaluation in August instead. So it would be an August to August year, so that it would encompass the whole school year. I don't know if that's something the school committee wants to consider, if we just think about that now and discuss it again in August.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure what direction you were headed in. I did bring that up to Mr. Farmer as a possibility, and I think we can have some further discussions about it. It would necessitate some changes in our policies. Does anybody have any thoughts on that right now? Not that we wouldn't necessarily need to make a decision right now, but does anybody have any thoughts on that? Paul?
I would be in favor of it only because, you know, when I did the evaluation this time, it seemed like it was a lot of time into it all at once, and it'd be nicer to reflect over the course of a month. You know, so if we got the materials late June or something, and then we did it in August.
Okay, good. Dick?
Also, I think there were some things also, I think there were some things in the goals that Mr. Farmer wasn't able to really comment on because they got delayed through process. And once we see some of the results of the process beyond the delay, then it gives us a better chance to accurately assess.
Robin?
Yeah, I think the timing would be better just because the end of the school year is insanely busy, and to give you a fair evaluation, it would be nice. You put a lot of time into that document you send us with artifacts, with exhibits, and it just all comes at such a busy time. I really, for all the time you put in, you deserve for us to look through it at length. And I mean, I did, but I just feel the timing is challenging this time of year. So I like the idea of the summer when we have a little bit of a breather to have a time of reflection to do that. But this process I thought was so, I think we're all on a learning curve from this whole new evaluation process. But I really want to thank you for the job you're doing and the time you put in to give us the artifacts and materials that I think helped us do a fairer job.
I think all of us would agree that it's been a busy 2 or 3 weeks. Everybody around this whole table would agree that it's been a busy 2 or 3 weeks, and it is unfortunate to have to feel crunched to do something as important as this. So we can have a discussion about that and hopefully come to a conclusion that will work for everybody. But again, thank you for putting in the time. And again, I know this is a different look, but I hope that it gives you enough information, enough detail about all of the things that we had to evaluate. And I think, generally, I think it's a very, very, very good evaluation.
If you're going to look at the evaluation system, I'd like to give you notice that I would like to discuss with you at an appropriate moment some of the assumptions about the current evaluation system. There's a note here about needing improvement in terms of timely supervision and evaluation. And there are 2 parts to this. One is I have agreed with principals that we're going to delay by 2 weeks their evaluations because they were just trying to deal with their staff evaluations. We've agreed that I will have drafts to them by the 19th, and we have scheduled follow-up meetings for the following week. I think there's one person that we still have to schedule, so that those will be done within the year, but slipping a little bit. The bit where you can reasonably regard me as unsatisfactory is not formally visiting 5 times to each school and writing up each time. That's partly time, but partly my approach to supervision. I see myself as a coach rather than a supervisor, and I have a lot of conversations with people when there are issues that need talking about that really sits outside the evaluation system that we've got at the moment. I think, and certainly you'd be welcome to talk with colleagues about that they feel comfortable with that. I don't think I give people an easy ride. Do I give people an easy ride? You can talk privately. So I'm just alerting you to the fact that I think it's worth our while having a discussion, because when you're evaluating people in a fairly tight team of 9, then it's a bit different than when you've got a host of people who you're not working closely with all the time. So I think that's probably worth a discussion in August.
Thank you. Any final comments on the superintendent's evaluation before we leave that?
So we're going to go to the August?
No, we're discussing it. We will, because it can't be just done with like that. We have to make some changes in policy, and we will talk about it in August. But it seems like that everybody would like to at least consider it. Next on the agenda will be the subcommittee reports. First is Policy Subcommittee. Linda?
Okay, if you turn to Annex 10, it is the Bullying Prevention and Intervention Plan. And we had talked about this in previous school committee meetings, but some changes were made to the regulation. And the changes are in the highlight in yellow. I don't know if Mr. Farmer would like to talk about this.
Well, there are changes in the regulations as a result of Chapter 38 of the Acts of 2013. If you look at page 2, that they have been more specific about illustrating the range of characters who may be susceptible to bullying. We've highlighted the definition on page 3 because there's a lot of confusion as to what bullying is and what bullying is not. We brought it up to date on page 4 because when this was first developed, we did acknowledge the people who were particularly involved, but now it's here. Bottom of page 4, there's a duty to report bullying data to the DESE, that we're going to need to administer a school climate survey developed by the DESE. And then there's some minor changes on page 6 because the numbers of some categories of staff have changed. I've highlighted on page 7 some new language. People tend to talk about lesbian, gay, transgender, but now there's Q for questioning their sexuality. I think that pretty much takes us through. Oh, on page 10, I'm sorry, the font doesn't quite match, but principals are required to inform parents or guardians of a victim of bullying about the DSE's problem resolution system, about which we know very little at the moment, other than they say that they have one. So essentially you've got a document that's just been brought up to date and includes the new regulations as we're required.
Does anyone have any questions about the bullying prevention plan? Yes, Monique.
When you talked about the locations of, I think it's on page 3, acts of bullying, which include cyberbullying, are prohibited, and it goes on to say on school grounds property, immediately adjacent to school grounds. What about walking to the bus stop? Is that considered under school purview? I'm only asking this because when I worked in the schools, I ran into that quite a few times, kids being bullied on the way to the bus stop.
We would regard it as being within our purview. Technically, it's when they get on the bus,
Yeah.
or to the bus stop. But if they're on the way to school, I think it's in our court.
And
Attorneys may not agree, but I mean, hello, we're in loco
That makes
parentis.
I had another question, only because this came up also when I worked in another system, but also I read about it in the newspaper this week about a parent that made a threat towards a school administrator. I think that happened in Arlington. Is that where you would address a bullying, would a bullying policy address where a parent might bully an administrator or school personnel? Or is that part of school policies?
I have on occasion had occasion to say to a parent, you may not communicate with the school except through my office because I'm not tolerating your behavior towards a member of the staff.
So that's just part of the system's policies, not part of the...
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on Dina?
On page 4, number 2, leadership, plan, maintenance, and evaluation, it says consideration will be given to the establishment of a standing committee of wider representation to advise on the maintenance and effectiveness of this plan. There's no timeline given there as to when that might happen. Was that intentional, or is this just...
It is intentionally vague.
Okay. Because I personally think expanding, I mean, I appreciate the work of all those people who initially worked on this, but I think expanding the membership on that would be, to include parents, would be a great idea.
The question is, how many issues can we deal with at any one time? We have relatively few incidents of bullying. We sometimes get complaints which aren't bullying. It's just a spat between kids or kids being kids. It's not, doesn't fall within. I don't see it as something that the administration should be spending a lot of time on in terms of developing this further. School administrators take it very seriously. You know, the physical and emotional well-being of students is our first priority. And so certainly we expect one another to look after the kids. I don't know what else we would achieve. We can have a committee, but unless there's a very clear purpose and a clear need, I think committees can be the thieves of time.
And I totally agree with that. So then maybe if we don't feel like we're going to be doing this at any time, should that be struck from this policy then?
I think we were reflecting the regulations of the day when we made reference to this. I think if we had a situation where there were issues that we were not handling well, I would certainly say, yeah, we need to bring some people back together to do some more work on this. But Brian, do you want to chip in on?
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, we have the wellness committee, and that's certainly a place that we can bring these issues up. And I'm dead. But I mean, other than that, I think it makes sense. Thank you both, too. To leave it in there as an opportunity for when issues do arise, and especially like you said, Christopher, when we have issues where we know we're not handling something well, to have input from as many constituents as possible would be very helpful.
Okay.
So I personally like the language there as a vague, not a must, but available when needed.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any more questions about the bullying prevention plan? Could we have a motion to approve the bullying prevention plan as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the bullying prevention plan as approved.
Could we have a second?
Second the motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Annex 11, the background checks. Mr. Farmer?
Would you like me to talk to this? The Association of School Committees did provide a model in which they simply took the existing CORI policy and then attached the fingerprinting material to it. It meant there was a lot of repetition. What I have tried to do is to conflate the two issues so that we've got a report that is more useful to people who actually have to implement the policy. So it looks a little bit different than the MASC model that you've seen. The one thing that we do is on page 70, where it says relying on previous suitability determination. This policy advises that we should not do that for the reasons that we have already discussed. Otherwise, this has been seen by our attorney, who found a couple of typos from the original, but that was essentially all. It has been checked by our attorney.
Are there any questions on the background check policy? Could we have a motion to approve the policy on background checks?
I'll make a motion to have
As a first reading. Sorry. Want me to say, I'll start over again, Linda, okay? Could we have a motion to approve the amendment to the following policies as first readings as recommended by the policy subcommittee at its meeting on May 27th, 2014? Better?
I'll make a motion that we approve the background checks.
Could we have a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
The next policy is the overnight and out-of-state field visits. Annex 12.
What we've done here is to take a very lengthy MASC document, which was strong on narrative, but didn't give strong guidance to somebody working their way through what they need to do. This again has been reworked so that the requirements at section 3 are very specific and not embedded in lengthy narrative. You'll see that because I've done that, a lot has now been struck out because it's encapsulated in that summary on page 3, 1 through 16. Maybe the area that the committee will want to look at most is the visit approval process. You regularly receive proposals. In most cases, you nod at them because they've been going for a long time. I believe that these approvals are really an executive function in that you set the requirements, and it's my job to make sure that they're being met. But I know that some of the committee have a particular interest in these, and so I've tried to suggest here, or I have suggested, that routine visits that happen every year, whether they're overnight or out of state, I should have authority to approve, but new non-routine and out-of-country visits should be approved in advance by the school committee.
Are there any questions about the overnight and out-of-state school-sponsored visits policy? Could we have a motion to approve the amendment to the overnight and out-of-state field visit policy as first reading, as recommended by the Policy Subcommittee at its meeting on May 27th, 2014?
I'll make a motion to approve the overnight and out-of-state school-sponsored visits amendment.
Could we have a second? Second. Thank you, Dick. Any discussion on the overnight and out-of-state visit field visit policy? All those in favor? Opposed? None? Thank you. Unanimous?
I will abstain.
Okay. Next, we have the policy on student discipline.
This is very complicated because we have new regulations which impact on the process through which a principal or administrator would investigate student misconduct. And there are new requirements placed on school districts to the extent that at the moment a school district can wash its hands of a student and say you're done. This is saying that no student is done, that we have to find ways of engaging them with some appropriate schooling, whether it's in the school or in the community or somewhere else. The status of this is that it is with our attorney. They were still working on it today. I'd still encourage you to approve this as a first reading, that we could then adjust if our attorney has got some advice that would materially affect what you have here. So this is really a development of what you have now. For example, on first page 2B, there's a list there of offences that we all know about that they're in, and continue on to the next page in handbooks now. The really curious thing about this is that in terms of due process, a principal has got to really kind of make a determination as to what he or she thinks the outcome will be, and then decide what the process is. And usually you have due process that reaches a conclusion and a consequence. Here we have a situation which is why when you get to page 79, you'll see that what I've done here, really with principles in mind, is not just give them a lot of narrative text, but to say, this is the short-term suspension hearing, this is what we have to do, and then if there's a possibility of a long-term suspension, everything on the right-hand side kicks in. I usually like to think I've got it right, but this is complicated, and it's an area where we could get into litigation if we don't get it right. There is technically some cost recovery in this. At the end, you'll see that I shall endeavour to recover reimbursement of qualifying expenditures under Chapter 71B, which is special education. Principals will have work to do in that they have to produce an education service plan, which is not going to be easy because it really means envisaging situations that we don't have and then having a plan to meet those circumstances. My association has produced a helpful checklist for principals, and we will certainly use that. So the committee is recommending this to you as is, as its best shot of dealing with the regulations, but bearing in mind that we do really need to get a thumbs up from our attorney. I apologise for the fact that it's not here today. We asked quite some time ago.
Are there any questions about the student discipline policy? Dick?
On subject 2, number 1, found on school premises, it doesn't mention alcohol, Christopher. Just drugs, firearms. Would that be something that should be included?
It's a controlled substance, I think, as far as they see it as a controlled substance. Yes, I mean, this is saying simply what the law says. It's not modifying that in any way.
Any other questions on the student discipline policy? Monique?
What is the difference between a short-term suspension and a long-term suspension? Is it a time, like a specific time frame?
Typically 10 days.
10 days is long, over 10 days is long, under 10 days is short.
Any other questions? Suzanne?
I think this was brought up in the past, but do students on special education, they have a different, don't they have a different...
They do. They have to have a manifestation hearing in which there's a determination as to whether the conduct which is troubling is a consequence of their disability or related to their disability.
Okay. Is that, I don't remember reading that in here. Is
Well, that's under...
a different policy?
It's not specifically included in here, but that is under different legislation.
Okay. And then you said this, and I think I just missed it because I was reading. For the students who are out 10 days or more, and then they have to come back and make up the missed credits and all that other stuff, do we have an action plan in place, a policy in place for those students, like a reentry plan? And whose onus is that? Is that the teachers? So say you have a kid gone for 15 days, they miss a half a month of school, and they come back in. Reality is it's very hard for the student to reenter, and it's hard for the teacher to get them caught back up. Is that a policy that you have in place?
There's an expectation that students are given a reasonable time to make up missed work. Schools typically have a re-entry meeting with the student and the family as they come back into school after any extended time out of school.
Required to provide them tutors for people that are suspended for long durations? I think I remember reading that somewhere in policy.
Well, we're required to try to keep them continuing learning. Interestingly, we're looking at the possibility of distance learning contributing to meeting the needs of these students.
Any other questions about the student discipline policy?
I have one more. Does this school have a zero tolerance policy?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay. So this doesn't change anything. I mean, it's always been kind of at your discretion.
It does change. Well, it doesn't change anything here,
right,
but it changes things for schools that do have a zero tolerance policy.
In the district or other schools?
Other schools.
Could we have a motion to approve the amendments to the student discipline policy as a first reading as recommended by the policy subcommittee at its meeting on May 27th, 2014?
I'll make a motion that we approve the student conduct suspension, expulsion, and rights to continuing education services policy.
Could we have a second, please? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the student discipline policy at first reading? Unanimous? Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the Finance Subcommittee report. Robin Williams.
Okay, so at our last meeting, in addition to reviewing our monthly reports, we dealt with two issues. One, the registration and fees collection process, and also the end-of-year balances. And there's not a lot left over, but we're going to walk through down to zero. We were at 70,000 a week ago. But anyway, to begin with, Brian, do you want to talk about the registration fees? We were talking about right now, if folks pay online, they are absorbing the fee to pay online. And if we transition to the district absorbing it, it will reduce that fee, but we think more people will pay online and we'll get that money up front instead of chasing down checks and never getting that money. So I'll let Brian go over the details of that, but
I think that sums it up in a
recommending to
nutshell.
make that.
This is kind of an evolving process over the past few years where we tightened up our restrictions on parents paying, and if they're sending in checks, they need to mail them to our office. It has to do with our written information security plan that you adopted 3 or 4 years ago. So in making things more secure, people think that paying online is insecure. Now we hear about breaches all the time, but it pales in comparison to putting a paper check in the mail, where wherever that lands, your name, your routing number, and your account number, people can do some serious damage. So more and more we're hoping people pay online, as well as register online. So this is kind of two-pronged. First, it's moving all of the registrations to an online system. We have this capability. There's no additional cost. It's embedded in the same system that we use for collecting fees. So there is, for no additional charge, we can do all of our registrations online. And we have a system that we've worked through to make sure that anyone who doesn't have access to a computer would be available to come into a school, whether we were talking about kindergarten registration and having computers available to have people register right away, or if it's someone who doesn't have a computer stopping by, and we would make a computer available for someone to register. That's solving the problem of paper lists being managed by everyone who's running a sport or an activity and having no real good concrete system. Second part of this is, as Robin said, making it free to pay online. Currently, you all know when you pay with a credit card, there's a convenience fee. You're always paying the convenience fee. Visa doesn't allow you to pass on a convenience fee. So if you're paying something that's $20 with a Visa online, you're probably really paying $7, and then there's a $3 fee embedded. They just don't allow you to call it a fee. So no one's been able to use Visa for the district because we pass on the fees. So this would allow people to make an ACH or e-check payment, any major credit card, and there'd be no additional charge. Currently, if you're paying a $350 user fee for a sport, you're going to pay a $10.50 surcharge, a convenience fee from the credit card company. It goes from 3+% to 2.5%, as you've read in this, if we absorb it. So all in, if everyone paid everything online using a credit card, we would see about 33,000, I think is the figure. There's no way everyone's going to do that. So even if we got half of that, I'd be thrilled, and I would all but guarantee that the 15,000 we're going to absorb in those fees, we're going to make up because people are going to be, it's going to be easier for people to pay. So that's, I think that, and I won't say a whole lot more, other than it's using existing resources in really streamlining the process and making it more and more secure.
All right, well, I'm going to ask for a motion and then we'll talk about it. Could we have a motion to approve a transition to an online registration and fee collection process for athletics and other activities with all credit card convenience fees absorbed by the district as recommended by the Finance Subcommittee at its meeting on May 29th, 2014?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right, is there any discussion? Dina?
Ask a question. Brian, you had said that you think that this will, I mean, there is a cost to us, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea how much money we might have lost because people have sent in checks that either didn't make it to us or?
I think the money, we haven't lost money. The example you give about a check being lost, I think that the number there is very slim. I mean, there are certainly times when someone says they've paid and they've mailed a check and our treasurer's never seen it. That's fewer and farther between. The larger issue is bounced checks that, for example, if someone has an institution for savings account, our bank's accounts are at institution for savings. If there's an 8-week program that we charge $100 for, if you're a parent, you sign your student up. Institution has I forget what they call it, but basically a convenience system, so that they're going to try for about 5 weeks to hold on to that check and not penalize you by bouncing it. So they may hold on to it, and we're thinking we're going to get payment, and at the end of 5 weeks, it bounces, and we're 5 weeks into an 8-week program, and we say, oh, we didn't get your $100. Oh, I'll send you a check. The second check never comes. So it's more that, and then we talk about monthly, and then at the end of the year, the balances that we don't collect in preschool, in user fees. More and more people are getting waived, and even folks that we put on payment plans, we try and be as reasonable as possible. But at the end of the day, unless we're taking people to small claims court, there's no system to make it easy. I think I've heard from a lot of people who want to be able to use a credit card and not have it be an additional charge. And secondly, I've heard from a lot of people who want to use their Visa. Apparently it's more popular than MasterCard. So that I don't think it's lost, and to quantify how much more we could get, I don't know. And talking to my counterpart in Chelmsford who did this with the same system, they more than recouped their fees. And they collect about the same we do in fees. And again, I'm talking everything from food services to preschool to athletics. They've never seen more than $15,000 to $20,000 in fees assessed to them, and they've easily increased that amount in their collections. So it's not we're collecting more; we're just doing a better job of actually collecting it. We're not assessing more, I should say.
Are there any other questions about the fees collection process?
That we don't, I mean, we assess close to $1.2 million in fees, if we're talking tuitions, everything. Depends on the year. This year in athletics, we're looking at roughly 30% of folks are being waived or reduced. Or part of that is waived, part of that is, I would say probably 15 to 20 is being waived, 5 to 10% is just that we're not getting. So if we applied that across the board to the 1.2 million, a 10% would be 120,000. Call them up? I do. And then I talk to them, and they love me, and we send notes. I mean, there are districts whose committees have charged their business official to take them to small claims court.
Is this year after year? Just they can't do theirs?
Doing a better, I would say in recent years, we're doing a better job of actually tracking that. Part of that is tracking all of this. Totally, absolutely.
They haven't put in a waiver. They say that they're not financially a hardship. They don't pay the bill. Sorry, your kid can't play soccer next year.
Well, in preschool and kindergarten, we're not enrolling, correct, if they have not paid?
So that's, I would say, the change with our athletic director, I can tell you he has systems, and again, we've been doing a lot more tracking. He's been a lot more firm about by that second week, if you're not paid, the student does in practice. Part of this is, the first part about online registration is having everything in one system. We don't have 50 paper lists floating all over everywhere with people saying, oh, I paid, it's in there. You know, it's literally, there's one place.
I'm
so
not blaming you, I'm just
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, part of it is a system that allows us to track and accurately identify, because I can't give you an accurate figure. You know, shame on me for saying that, but I can't give you an accurate figure. So we need the system that I can say to you,
I can see why it's happening. I'm not blaming you. I'm just.
No, I don't feel the blame. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'll be calling you. You'd be shocked. Not you, but I mean, you'd be shocked. The people
I remember
call.
when Lucinda talked to us about collecting food money, lunch money, and I think it was Lucinda that talked to us about that. And it's people that have the money, but
Right. I mean, I understand people don't have the money. That's fine.
Right.
Yep.
Any other questions on the fees collection process? All those in favor? Opposed? Non-unanimous. Thank you. End of year balances?
Skip it.
Well, we started with a longer list, and then we really asked the administration to prioritize, and that's what you're seeing in front of you. And part of, we knew we wouldn't have a lot of end-of-year balances, but there were certainly things that we felt were really, really pressing. So some revolving accounts do carry balances, and we talked about how much we were willing to dip into those. And so the items you see in front of you are, that was as far as Christopher and Brian were willing to go at the time. And then we have an ongoing list in the event that there was any additional money. And there's also the possibility of credits coming in. No?
It's still a possibility. We have
But-
how many more days? 20 more days, but
What we're looking at in front of us now is what we would act on prior to the end of the fiscal year. And then once we start the new year, if those solar credits come up and all, there's an ongoing list of priorities. But for tonight, we're looking at things that we'd like to do prior to the close of the fiscal year. Brian?
We'll make a motion and then have a discussion. Could we have a motion to consider and approve the expenditure of available end-of-year funds and other available funds as listed on your agenda?
I'll make a motion to consider and approve expenditure of available end-of-year funds and other available funds as follows. Would you like me to read through them?
Sure.
I'll second.
A 4-year lease of 225 Chromebooks for all non-administrator educators, which will cost $22,000 to be funded by end-of-year balances or school choice balances. B, at the middle school, removal of lab stations and floor repairs, which will create an extra classroom. That's estimated to be $4,000 and to be funded from building rental receipts. C, at the high school, special education, TALC room, window air conditioner installation, $2,500 to be funded from building rental receipts. At the high school, a room partition for the TALC room to provide services to 18 to 20-year-olds. This would actually divide the room up to provide a second space, to be funded from the building rental receipts. E, to request that the Finance Subcommittee keep opportunities to meet other expenditure requests under review and make recommendations as funds become available. And F, to note that there may be additional revenue in FY14 and 15 from National Grid energy credits related to the district's use of solar energy.
Okay, the motion was moved by Robin and seconded by Mary. Do we have any discussion? Paul?
I just have a question. I thought with category A, the 225 Chromebooks, did we approve the lease before or the lease and the payment? I thought we already dealt with that.
We did, Paul, you're right. I was going to bring up that same point because it's in the agenda from last month.
You approved the purchase, but not where the money was coming from.
Yeah, that was my question.
Okay, because I thought, give me just a second.
We
thought
said
I
it was
had
in
right
the
here.
works during our meeting. It was just where the money was.
yeah, I wasn't at that meeting, but my understanding, I wanted to make sure you heard that, but my understanding was that it was hopefully out of end-of-year funds, and if we couldn't use end-of-year funds, it would be another mechanism. So this is saying we would charge choice.
Any other questions on the expenditures? All those in favor? Opposed? None, unanimous. Thank you very much. Personnel and Negotiations Subcommittee. Dina?
Well, as we reported earlier, we've settled 2 contracts. Brian has said that he's received notification from the ASME groups that they want to begin negotiating, so we will have those contracts to do beginning this fall.
Excellent. Action items. We have some visits to approve. Annex, oh goodness, 16 and 17.
What you have here is seeking approval of what I call the kind of planning permission, because until they know which students are going to be going, they can now complete the form, because the form requires them to specify whether or not they have taken all necessary steps to ensure that students who have disabilities are able to be involved or reach an agreement with the family that some other arrangements will be made. So I think increasingly for some of these long-distance ones, it'll be a question of outline planning permission, and then our bringing the formal final proposal to you. But this will give them authority to fundraise, to recruit, and then when they've got that firmed up, we would then bring one of the forms, the new forms that you've seen, to you for formal final approval.
Could we have a motion to approve outline planning permission for a visit from the high school visual and performing arts students to New York City, New York in spring of 2015?
I'll make the motion.
Could we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the trip to New York? All those in favor? Opposed? None. Thank you. Unanimous. Could we have a motion to approve the outline planning permission for the Triton Travel Club students to go to England, Ireland, and Wales? Anticipated departure of June 22nd, 2016.
So moved.
Could we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the trip to Great Britain? Suzanne?
I have a question. Is that the end of school? Or is that still under our...
Well, it's, if it's done under the Triton Travel Club, if it's a school trip, I don't think it would matter whether it was during the school year or at the end of the school year, if it's gone into the school.
After the 185th day.
Right.
But is your question, because it's not during the school year?
Does that have any, does that have anything... I mean, EF is a private...
Right, but it's the Triton Travel Club going.
Right, I just don't know if there's anything legal that if our school year ends at 180 whatever days.
If they are an active student and it is under the jurisdiction of the school committee, they will be covered. So it's not restricted to the 180 days.
That's a good question.
That is a great question. Yep.
Any discussion on the Great Britain trip? Any further discussion?
Could we just, in case we offend people, the parts of Ireland that they're going to are not part of Great Britain, so...
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we...
Thank you,
Christopher.
My mistake. Sorry. Looked like Great Britain to me, but... all those in favor of the trip to England, Ireland, and Wales? Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Next item on the agenda, number 9, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Could we have a second? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Very productive meeting. If I don't see you sooner, I'll see you on August 3rd. Some of you I will see sooner.
They need to understand that I think it drives the superintendent figures going up and down like that. Yeah, we go, because somebody discovers
Well, what
something.
happened was this friend of mine called, you know Linda? I don't. Oh, she used to be the assistant principal. Anyway, she said, Mary has, your insurance stuff